Sometimes strange things happen. Sometimes unbelievable and remarkable things occur that we simply cannot fathom, and sometimes, if it gets enough attention, people go way out on a limb as theories range from probable to impossible. When we see these things, these mysteries, they need to be deduced. Welcome to Deduced, the series that tries to find a logical resolution to a perplexing question. About once a month, I take on a challenge to do exactly that. Today, we get something a little paranormal or supernatural. Since the beginning of recorded history, people have looked to the sky, trying to see what was so far beyond our natural world. We see the stars, and there's a part that wants to reach out to them, to understand and to extend, and more than that, to wonder if our world is the only one that has any kind of life on it. But it looks, at least recently, like many visits from those extraterrestrials, there have been many unique sights of things that cannot be explained. So what are the secret of these things? What sort of communications are they trying to use? What is it they're trying to tell us? As usual in Deduced, it is something that I have researched thoroughly. I may have some answers that won't be accepted, but it's something that must be explored. So grab your tinfoil hat, sit back, relax, and let's get started. Somehow, and I'm not exactly sure how, the term UFO has automatically been assigned to alien visitation. The fact behind the label isn't necessarily all about alien craft. It means there's something in the air that isn't known, at least not yet. There are certain obviously logical conclusions, and the label can be reversed to the term IFO, or identified flying objects. Such things as balloons, floating lanterns, birds in the distance, and even distant airplanes can be misidentified as these mysterious craft. But not everything in the air can be truly identified. Still, at a distance and not able to see it clearly, it can be assumed a lot of things can be. So when did it become a common thing to hear UFOs being called flying saucers? A pilot in 1947 saw what appeared to be a squadron of flying objects that he couldn't identify. There actually wasn't much rotation to them, but he described them as such. But that didn't stop the reports coming in about craft that could move at directions and speeds which would, if humans were in control, basically kill them. There are some things about these craft that seem to be practically, and here's an intended pun, universal. In looking over the many reports, it's clear that there are three distinct types of objects that can't be identified easily. I'll go through them each with a classification and a description. Type 3 are the scouts. These craft appear to be the most common, spots of light that move around in unusual patterns. They tend to move really fast, following patterns of flight that won't easily be replicated. Some are even reported to have defensive capabilities, but most are small. This type is also commonly associated with ball lightning. Type 2, call them contactors. These are what many call flying saucers and are the ones that appear to be the ones that make most of the dramatic tales. If there's a movie or TV show about UFOs, these are the ones that usually make the cut. These guys are the ones from movies such as Close Encounters of the Third Kind and TV shows like X-Files. This is one that's also very interesting. Type 3 is what I call a mothership. This class actually makes a lot of sense. These are the biggest suckers. The ones that seem to basically defy any known law of flight and gravity. The vessels of this size are spotted actually rarely, but they do make some impressions, especially when there's almost no sound. It makes sense because it's not likely that the contactors are the ones where most of the alleged experimentation takes place. Now, don't understand me. I'm going to go through it all in detail a little later. But now for the one part that almost everyone has heard of. Usually, when it comes to what the government knows, the first subject that comes to mind is the crash of an alleged flying saucer at the ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. In 1947, the papers across the nation spoke of the recovery of UFO parts by military personnel, called such by the same personnel, but was later explained to be just a weather balloon. There are two sides to this, both of which are very interesting. The first is that it's a cover-up of a real flying saucer crash, with more and more people insisting that the military is trying to hide something sinister from the citizens. Try saying that 5 times fast. The second is there are explanations for the whole incident. I won't say which one I lean towards, except to say one side seems to be going in more detail, something that someone who's desperate might do. There are plenty of other examples, up to and including some noted sightings by professionals and people who are trained to be very specific. This includes police officers, pilots, air traffic controllers, and more military personnel. There are many reports of fighter planes that are shocked when they see flying things that make moves that today's fighters still can't make. There are reports of airline pilots that tell of encounters in the air with craft that can't be explained. There are police officers who report on these things that are inexplicable. While these can be given a little bit of extra legitimacy, it has led to some believe that the U.S. government has known about alien craft for a very long time. It has led to some discussion that suggests they are allowing the alien beings to abduct U.S. citizens to do experiments on in trade for the continuation of the human race. But how much can be assumed? I'm sure you've heard of a somewhat controversial report called Project Blue Book, and I'm sure you also know why the UFO community scoffs at it. But here's where the reality gets in. The reason why I call a lot of these things entirely explainable. Project Blue Book was only the latest exploration by the U.S. military into the UFO phenomenon. There are, according to what I've researched, at least 2 predecessors, each of which the UFO community believes is total lies. But I already described the reason why I believe what I do about UFOs. If we were to take all the possible UFO sightings as actual extraterrestrial craft, or to have a serious exploration of the same, we have to entertain the possibility that many of these so-called encounters are, in fact, entirely explainable. Imagine someone reporting an inexplicable encounter, one that seems to have something totally alien behind it, yet there are things missing. It's a part of deduction where you not only look at the facts, but at the facts that are missing. And there are the reports of UFO sightings from others. I mean, the ones I call contactors are hardly secret, but the reports all come from individuals, not communities. There's the alleged report of someone in a community in Florida who was basically stalked by a series of UFOs and aliens using Polaroid camera and VHS recordings, but things get a little bit questionable. The Polaroid shots are quite still, which is one of the requirements for a good Polaroid shot, but the VHS tape shakes all over the place. Then there's a suspicious lack of reports from people all around the site. Finally, there's an eerie mock-up of the yards and house to scale in the upstairs attic of the garage. UFO investigators and conspiracy theorists tend to ignore that part. They treat this as if it wasn't an elaborate hoax. Or there's the man in Washington State that claims he injured an alien after it killed his dog and had it on tape. The thing is, it was shown how obviously fake it looked, and he kept insisting that his story was real despite the obvious fakes in his supposed tape. But can all of these things be discounted? Notice that one thing that these last two accounts miss: the lack of corroborating witnesses. There is one particular sighting in the late 90s that I have no explanation for, and that was what's called the Phoenix Lights. There are multiple recordings of these lights from multiple angles, which gives the report a lot of validity. And rather than mocking the report a while later by a government official who claimed he had found the one responsible and brought in a guy in an alien costume in handcuffs. But the reports coming out later of Luke Air Force Base claiming they were dropping flares that night seemed to be a little off. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that trying to get as many reports as possible to try and uncover what is behind the UFO phenomenon is daunting, to say the least. During the times of most of the reports, there were fears of attack from enemy forces and, what's more, a little bit of paranoia. Yet a small force goes out to try and verify the reports. Let me see what I can tell you about this. Let's say that there are 1,000 reports of flying objects that aren't identified across the country. In order to fully explain this, the Air Force sends out a team of investigators. Let's say they have to spend money for air fuel, car fuel, paper, hotels, restaurants, and other things that might be needed for the team to do their job. Now then, we add in the rather human nature of filling in gaps in a story, whether or not it's true. Basically, unless it's recorded by our outside means, eyewitnesses can forget the little details that might be important. So let's guesstimate $1,000 per investigation, which can be attributed through those two mentions before. And while we can incorporate reports from air traffic control stations as well, other courses of actual aircraft in the area at the time. So for 1,000 reports, that costs at least $1 million. Yet, what could be taken very seriously at first, when applied to logic and reason, would seem to go more and more towards the idea that what people have witnessed aren't actual alien aircraft, but simple explanations that those who witness them can seem to wrap their heads around. It's been something in my experience that tells me that when shown something supposedly incredible, such as, say, a magic trick, stay with me here, the actual explanation is the smallest details that we are programmed by our nature to ignore. It's called misdirection, and it is the whole secret to the magic and illusion career path. So with the idea that some of the UFO reports can be explained more and more, it becomes more and more expensive to take it seriously, which means that Project Blue Book, although it does contain some data declaring unexplained, was probably the last one because it was obviously a very expensive project to take seriously. Given that, does it make sense that they stopped looking into the phenomenon? But then we get to what is perhaps the best known governmental hiding and exploration spot in the United States, and the most famous secret project, what is labeled the Groom Lake Facility, or more famously, Area 51. On the surface, the explanation seems to be legit. It's a place that develops aircraft technologies and tests them out. And it's kept secret to ensure the U.S. has the most advanced aircraft in the world. It was a place that developed the B-2 bomber and the F-117A, both of which look entirely different from airplanes before, because they are, by their own definition, unable to be picked up by radar, or more likely read only as a small animal. This is called, believe it or not, stealth technology. Yet so many claim they reverse engineer alien tech there. There are even claims from alleged former workers that every technological advance we've made came from figuring out how aliens did it first. Here I have a serious issue because of two factors. The reason I called the former workers as alleged is because, in my mind, is the same as isolated people telling their own experiences and not having anyone being able to back them up. There is, according to what I have researched, only one person who insists that they have a captured alien ship at Area 51. Sure, it may seem like it's a total shock, but there are two facts to this individual that nobody who wants to believe in the UFO phenomenon tend to ignore. First, it's only one person who says this. As I stated before, having multiple witnesses adds validity to a case, but there's only one. Second, that person is still alive. You know, when it comes to this, there are those that would claim everyone else has been threatened, but one person making a claim is bound to bring up others if they saw the same thing. There would be multiple, perhaps anonymous, reports from others who saw it. The second part says more to me than the first, that has been allowed to continue his telling of the fantastic tale without anyone attempting to kill him in order to shut him up. If it was really that big a secret, he'd have been eliminated pretty soon after. And then there's the second part of this, the whole subject, the one that really makes me a little mad. As a race, we humans are fairly inventive. After all, half a century ago, the idea of holding a small portable communicator in your hand and talking to someone a long way away was something given to science fiction in the form of Star Trek. Yet today, we not only have smartphones that can talk to people elsewhere, we also have phones that can look up information we might need, give us important data, like what the weather's like, I use this often myself, and let us read something we might want to read. This, and many other things, was done because someone wanted to see if it could be done. I'd imagine there were many unsuccessful attempts to try and do what they wanted. But we have all these things available to us because of human invention and imagination.
And now we get to something very interesting. Throughout all the reports over the years, and especially the last century, there seems to be multiple cases of people finding themselves in examination rooms run by aliens. Now, I won't say this explanation
even from here
fits for all these episodes. There are some I still can't find a reasonable explanation for. I will say that the majority of these cases might just be a lot easier to explain than some alien medical experimentation done for some nefarious purpose. In the majority of cases, by collection due to hypnosis, which I'll go into a little later, the idea comes that the person who has allegedly been abducted is held fast on some strange surface while surrounded by strange-looking creatures as they inject things and touch things into and on their bodies. Then they're returned. There are many that exclaim there was some kind of bright light. But here's where it becomes less about alien technology and more about something hardly anyone we hear on TV speaks of, what's called a waking dream. In the dream state, called REM for rapid eye movement, the first thing we need to realize is that our bodies, except for voluntary functions, meaning heartbeat and respiration, paralyze us. This isn't some kind of psychological disorder. It's something we all do, or I should say most of us. The body is made to not move, otherwise we would go walking about, enacting what we dream without realizing it. This is what causes sleepwalking, but that's for another case. But how many dreams can you accurately remember? Sure, according to studies, we seem to believe it is real while we're in them, but most of the time it's forgotten by the time we wake up. The REM stage doesn't last long, but it can cause us to have flashes of dreams, unless it's a waking dream. I have had, in my count, 3 waking dreams myself. I can recall them perfectly, but it doesn't matter about that. It only matters that it does happen. This is when we wake up while still dreaming, and we see things through the haze of the dream vision. Now, I can't tell you what the dreams mean. That, I believe, is entirely up to the person who's dreaming. I know I've dreamed of my beautiful angel at least twice because I was in a waking dream, although I can't remember much about it. But the images from my dreams is where it gets interesting for me. There may be images where we see people looking in on us who have light low down behind them, casting a shadow of a large head. We have feelings of intimacy because it's a place where we can have those thoughts and those beliefs without fear of compromise. So could it not be, in many of these abduction cases, a simple dream of possible intimacy and a secret desire to do something a little naughty? But then we get into hypnotic regression, the go-to solution for those who are thought to be abducted. The problem is that, for a long time, we see the images of what's called grays. I can do a whole bit on that alone, but I will say it's that the novels that brought the idea of grays to the forefront were written by a science fiction author. So it's not such a big deal to figure out that the book Communion and its numerous sequels might just be a fictional account. But we see these things, we hear people who are supposedly experts telling us that we shouldn't think of little green men, but the grays. And now we get into the fallacy of hypnosis. Now, I don't think I need to describe some of the more outrageous facts. I don't believe that it's actually possible to instantly hypnotize someone, but for those where it's actually done, I do believe it can be helpful, but then the issue comes up. How would we be sure that when we're reporting under regression isn't just a dream? How can we be certain that we're not just recalling a frightening experience while in REM sleep? Now, it's not too hard to figure out. Skilled hypnosis can easily guide a person through a series of strange dreams, making it more and more than a standard alien abduction scenario before being told what they need to remember. I've tried to find it, but there is a study that was done where 12 individuals were asked if they would like to experiment with hypnotism, none of which believed UFOs were real. Of the dozen, 9 of them came out of it believing they were abducted.
I think I've pretty much shown how a number of possible UFO encounters could have a more earthbound solution, and how those who believe they have been abducted might just be living a post-hypnotic suggestion of a dream being real. I think I've showed that, for the most part, there is a more likely explanation for things other than what some older guy with a baseball cap and sunglasses, a guy with hair that looks like he stuck his finger in a light bulb socket and it stayed that way, or someone with a very serious voice and crazy beard might immediately assign to extraterrestrial involvement. Sure, there are still those things that have no explanation right now. There are those things that really are mysterious. What's more, and this I definitely want to point out, there are those cases where hypnotic regression and make-believe models can't explain. Still, why would aliens try to contact us? I think the answer for that is pretty obvious. The vast majority of science fiction either shows aliens as trying to exterminate us or have some kind of ultra-advanced culture that we can barely understand. They try to stay away in fear that we will try and destroy them, or that, aside from what one particular UFO enthusiast describes, we'll begin to worship them. However, I do think that contact is inevitable. I do believe there will come a time when we are shown exactly how big and how wondrous as well as frightening the universe really is. Sooner or later, those who come from worlds other than Earth will come in and say hello. It will be up to us, when that time comes, to decide what to do then. I hope, when the time does come, we will be mature enough and capable enough to not try and kill them, to not deify them, but to accept them as fellow beings in an infinitely gargantuan universe. So that's it. Sorry it's a little late. Had some fun yesterday during all the flooding. But I hope you agree with me after all that when I say it's funny how often we're told that extraterrestrials are there without having any basis for it, rather than extreme belief. As always, give the video a thumbs up, comment below, subscribe up here, I think. These are my social media banks, and I do check them. And down here, a couple of other videos I hope you'll watch and enjoy. Also, check the links down in the description. There is a place to get the music from my GoFundMe campaign so I can drive for Uber, and of course, all the stories I've written on Kindle. Check them out, and we'll see you all next time.